Hey guys, it's Paul from Online Sax Academy, and in today's lesson we're going to be looking at how to solo over Stevie Wonder's Isn't She Lovely? So this is the third lesson of a three-part series looking at this song. In the first part we learned how to play this song in an easier key. If you'd like to have a look at that, that's in the card above. In part 2 we learned how to play the full song in the original key, including both of Stevie Wonder's harmonica solos. Now in today's lesson we're going to take the final chorus of Stevie Wonder's amazing harmonica solo, we're going to put it into an easier key, we're going to put it down from concert E major into concert E flat major, which puts us into C major on altos and F major on tenors, and we're going to have a look at what he's doing and then apply some of those things into your own solos. Linked in the description below, I've got the PDF of the full transcription of Isn't She Lovely, both in the original key and in the easier key as well. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on future lessons. All of the analysis we're doing today, we're going to be doing it in the key of C major, just to keep things simple and clear. Anything we do talk about in this key can apply into other keys, you just have to transpose those ideas. If you're not sure about how to transpose things into different keys, then I've made a previous video on this subject, which is in the card above. So first of all, I'll play through that last chorus of solo with it transposed down and that high phrase moved into an easier place to play on the sax. And feel free to have a go at playing along with this. As usual, I've got the fingerings on the side and we've got the note names written underneath the music. And then we'll get into the analysis. So we're going to take it from the first 4-bar phrase of the last chorus, with that bar leading in. These first 4 bars only use the notes from the C major pentatonic, apart from one note which we'll talk about later. The notes of the C major pentatonic are C, D, E, G, A, and that's all we've got here. Now this way of improvising is what we call a more horizontal or melodic approach to improvising. You're not so concerned about outlining each chord and landing on certain chord tones, but instead you're making a nice melodic shape with the pentatonic scale and you're floating over the top of those chord changes. So first of all you can see that we're moving in a stepwise motion, so we're not jumping around the pentatonic scale. Now towards the end when we do have a jump, there's a nice technique which you can try, which is when you say jump up, you fill in the gap you've created. So you can see here we've got C's jumping to G's and then we're filling in that gap with an E. Then we jump up again to the A and then again we fill in that gap to the G. Now that one note that's not in the pentatonic, it's the E flat. Now this is what's known as the blues note, it's the flattened third, if we're thinking in the context of a C major scale. And he quickly moves off that down onto the D. That's a really nice way to use that blues note. You can also flick up onto the E natural as well. So looking at this line rhythmically, the first thing is these quavers have a heavy shuffly swing feel, meaning we're thinking 2/3 and a third. The placement of that second quaver can move around and it creates different kinds of swing feels, but that's broadly speaking what's going on. The first note of that lead-in starting on the second triplet, which is a really nice place to place a note. It's not often played, that second triplet. Normally when people think of triplets they'll play da ba da da ba da da ba da and they'll put all 3 notes in, or they'll do the swing quavers of course, da 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 da. But that second triplet, da da da, creates a nicer bit of syncopation and kind of rhythmical tension. And we have a similar thing where we have these CD pairs of triplets, where instead of going C, D, C, D, C, D, we're going C, D, C, D, C, D. And by finishing that pair of notes on the second triplet, it helps to accent that place in the beat. Now if we look at the next 4 bars, we're almost exclusively using the major pentatonic. We've got another blues note. This time it's not resolving down to a D, but it's going up to an E natural. And here we have what's called a diatonic note. So it's coming from the broader C major scale. We've got that F. which is the fourth. Now this is sometimes called the avoid note, and it's because it creates tension with the third of the chord. And in this case we are going to have a look at what chord you're playing over when you use that F. So he's putting that F on this G11 chord. Now a G11 chord is basically just a G7 chord with some extra extensions on. And in your G7 chord you have G, B, D, F natural. That F natural is what we call the dominant seventh. Now in the solo he's using that F natural in to build his melodic line, and it's a way of adding interest to your pentatonic scale, and it's a really nice way to use that F and not have it clash. Again, you'll notice that the line is very much moving in stepwise motion. There's not much jumping around at all here. In the place where he does jump at the end, he's jumping down to that C. So he's going from the fifth and then hits the D, but then really it's resolving onto that C there, which is obviously the first degree, the home note. And when you are jumping with bigger intervals, it generally makes more musical sense if you're jumping to a chord tone. Now on that third phrase, this is where the harmony changes and we get that E7 flat 9 chord. But you can see, even though we've got that E7 flat 9 chord, he's still only using the C major pentatonic for that bar. He's making more of a feature of Fs here, which makes sense because we're on an F major 7 chord, which here he's placing on beat 1 for a quarter note and beat 3 for a quarter note, the two strong beats in the bar, and he's holding it for a full beat. The most interesting thing for me about this line though is the rhythm. This third bar here, these are what are sometimes called offbeat triplet quarter notes. And what that means is, normally when we see quarter notes, they're starting right on the beat and we've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But here we've got that same rhythm, he's just displaced it by one triplet quaver. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Because we've had so many triplet quarter notes already, it's quite nice to hear those displaced by a triplet. On this line as well, there's quite a lot of use of these grace notes, where he's flicking from the note below onto the target note. That's a really nice way to decorate some notes and to accentuate them. And for the final phrase of this song, over the G11 chord, again, we've mostly got notes from the C major pentatonic, but interestingly here, we've got a B flat. Now a B flat is what we would call the sharp 9 on a G7 chord. Or if you're thinking in C major, that B flat is the flattened 7th. The B flat's a really nice blues note to use as well when you're using a C major pentatonic. The best way to resolve these tension notes is to move to the nearest note down. So you don't jump off it up to a high note, but you slide down, and that helps resolve that tension in a really nice way. And then we've got some Fs again. Now F isn't an avoid note at all when you're on a G11 chord, because again it's from that G7 chord. The F is one of the chord tones, and because we're in the key of C, it's always nice to finish your solos off on the root note, and that's what happens here. So after analysing Stevie Wonder's solo, the things we can take from this to then go away and practice and create your own phrases from are, first of all, obviously the C major pentatonic. You want to get really comfortable with that scale, be able to move up and down it in a very free way, where you're not having to think, what's the next note? It should be completely automatic and under your fingers. And that frees up your creative side to start thinking of how you'd like to use that scale rather than just trying to get the notes out. The next thing I would practice in terms of notes are adding in your blues notes. So we've got E flat, and the way that resolves quickly down to a D or up to an E. And it's good to practice that in the various octaves as well, using the 4th degree in your solo as well, and knowing the best places in the chord sequence to place it. In terms of rhythms, I practice placing notes on the 2nd triplet of the beat, playing around with just playing 2 triplets instead of the usual 3, and finally those offbeat triplets. The more melodic things you can take from this are the jumps up and then filling in the gap, or vice versa, jumps down and then filling in the gap back up. See if you can spot where these techniques are. I'll play it through once without any annotations on it, and then I'll play this through again with those annotations on so you can see exactly what I'm thinking as I'm playing it. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you have any questions about today's lesson or any ideas for future things you'd like me to cover, feel free to write that in the comments below. All right, see you next week.